Hello, Pixies. Welcome on in. What is with my voice? Okay, let's try that again. Hello, Pixies. It is your queen, Lady the Lady, here back with some more Warframe action. What are we talking about today? We're going to be talking about those augments that came out like last week. Yeah, last week. I meant to do this a while ago, but I'm consistently overworked. That's really what it is. Poor time management and not enough time in the day. Anyway, so we're going to be giving a quick little TLDR on my opinions of the current augments, and long and short of it is that most of them aren't really worth using in my opinion. There's only a couple that are really worth, and we're going to go over the reasons for that. Now, before we continue, if you aren't already following the channel or my Twitch or any of my other socials, consider doing that. It really will support the channel, and it means a whole bunch if you do so. And with that, let's get started. So, in this most recent patch 30.90, which I think has been like dubbed Prime Resurgence, I don't actually know, but the quality of life update from last week also introduced 4 new augments, 2 for Xaku, 1 for Lavos, and 1 for Trin. Now, I'll be completely honest, I was over the moon to hear that 2 of my favorite frames, because if you were to look at my profile, you would see that Xaku and Lavos are in like the top row, which is quite impressive, all things considered, but I get distracted. So I was really excited to hear that they were getting some augments, and I was really hoping that they would bring something interesting to the table, but when we saw what they were, I was already a little skeptical. The Vampiric Grasp one I had immediately just kind of tossed to the side, I didn't care, but the Relentless Lost I was holding out hope for. And so with that, why don't we start there? So we'll start with Xaku. Vampiric Grasp is a Grasp of Lock augment. When a stolen weapon deals damage to an enemy affected by the Lost, Gaze, or the Vast on time, Xaku heals by 25. Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with this mod, it's just one that is also just so unnecessary and kind of weird. Warframe loves to give us like healing augments as if health really matters. And the reason that I mention this in the case of Xaku is that Xaku is probably the most difficult frame to build, just in general. Like, I know some people would say, but what about Equinox? But no. So, Xaku, first you have to get their blueprint from the Heart of Deimos quest. You need to farm their neuroptics, chassis, and systems from bounties. None of that is particularly difficult, but they do make one of their parts for building a gyromag, which requires you to have rank 5 Solaris standing to have access to the fight that will give you access to those. So it's this weird kind of thing where this is an augment that I would inherently think is more geared towards early game people, but unless you're just gonna like instantly buy Xaku and avoid all that, which honestly is a plausible explanation, I don't see this really being that useful outside of like base star chart. But even then, even if we're not talking about the idiosyncrasies of health and debating the value of health in Warframe, there's also the fact that Xaku already innately has evasion in their kit, and there are already builds that let you have 100% evasion in their kit. Their ultimate gives them 75% evasion. It also slows enemies. So like, there's so much control and there's already so much survivability that it felt like such an unnecessary add-on. And if one wanted to do healing, I feel like there's better options through Helminth, which, to be completely honest, you'd probably have unlocked by the time you naturally got Xaku, unless again you had done the thing where you just bought them. But I don't think this is like what that is. I'm just speaking in a more general sense. Now, if this was an augment that did like shield regeneration, then it would be worth, because we live in a shield gating meta. We don't live in a health meta. So that's my opinion on that. Is it like bad per se? No. Would I ever use it? No. It just feels unnecessary. Like, I wouldn't waste a slot on this because of how Xaku's kit already exists. Now, the Relentless Lost was the one that I really was curious about. The Lost augment. Casting the Lost increases ability strength for the Lost up to 35% up to 3 times. This resets if you cast the same ability twice. So on paper, this looks like a good thing, because this means that you can reduce the overall strength requirement and invest more fully into something like range, which would be my best recommendation since everything scales off of range. But there's a few problems with this, and makes it so that, generally speaking, Xaku's base builds that you've already run with like negative efficiency and etc. and the 200% ability strength are just going to work better. Now, the biggest issue with this one is that if you read, it increases ability strength for the Lost up to 105%. That's what 35 times 3 is for those that don't know. Now, this is important to note because this is the exact amount of ability strength you need to hit 200% if you're running both Transient Fortitude and Overextended, which is why I feel like this augment was made with range builds in mind. But that ability strength increase, and also you need 200% ability strength to be able to get a full defense trap using the gaze, which is also what I'm pretty sure the majority of this is based off of, because everything will have increases, but the only one that has like a significant impact is going to be the gaze. Most people don't even use the rest of the Lost or find the rest of the Lost to be kind of meh. I don't. I like Accuse. I think Deny is meh, but Accuse and Gaze I think are actually quite nice. However, this ability strength increase is only for the Lost, and that is huge because part of Xaku's survivability comes from the 4, and the 4 is slow. While the evasion rate remains the same, you're taking a huge hit if you're not building any strength and just using the Relentless Lost as a means of compensation, because it doesn't share this ability strength across the other abilities, which means that instead of having a like 50% slow, you have like a 20% slow. And the difference between a 50% slow and a 20% slow is dramatic. Now, that is issue A with the Relentless Lost. The other issue with the Relentless Lost is the fact that you're now double casting abilities. Xaku is a Warframe that kind of wants to have everything positive because literally everything gets increased with a different stat. Both the first ability, the third ability, and the fourth ability use ability strength as a major component in their scaling. But also, the second ability, the third ability, and the fourth ability utilize range to a dramatic effect. The Grasp of Luck literally scales the amount of enemies that it can disarm through range. Finally, duration is super important because this will increase the amount of time you can keep your abilities active, because both the first, second, third, and fourth ability all have differing duration timers. But not only that, the Vast on Time has that pause cooldown component. So the longer you can have your 4 up, the better, because that means you can overextend the timers on the rest of your abilities much easier. So being mostly positive is the way to go. And so in a lot of builds, people will take the hit to efficiency because they want to try and maximize the rest of those positive stats as much as possible. Now, the downside with this augment is you lose out on a lot of that because of this augment. So it's actually more efficient to just generally play with your old builds than using these augments. The Relentless Lost just takes away too much. I tested it with 100% efficiency and took a hit to duration instead, and it's a serviceable build, but it's not one that is really feasible for the majority of content. It's really only useful if you're going to use a build that is for an endurance type setting, so a survival or the like, because you're now double casting abilities in order to cast an ability and keep your buff up. So now you're taking more energy, which means you now need efficiency. So those typical builds won't work with just a quick switcheroo with the Relentless Lost. You have to build like a completely different one where you're just like a 95% strength or in like 100% efficiency with like a hit to duration. Otherwise, you could also, build strength, but then where again is that differential going to come in? Because you have to have that prime float and you have to have that at least 100% efficiency, or you have to build efficiency. But if you're building efficiency, then you're not really winning anywhere, because now you're still building for 3 stats instead of what hopefully would be making 2 stats. That's what, that's what the bonus of this augment would have been. Being able to build 2 stats instead of 3, and we can't do that. That's the TLDR. Okay, and that's gonna be the end of this video because I realized that I had almost 20 minutes of talking and people don't seem to like me talking for more than 10 minutes. Anyway, so we're gonna split this in half, and this will just be the Xaku portion because I have a lot of opinions on Xaku. The Lavos and Trinity side is a lot shorter, so we'll get that out soon. But thank you for listening, and hopefully you enjoyed my fairly minimally edited explanation as to why I'm not a huge fan of these augments. At best, they're meh. At worst, they're actually detrimental to playstyles. And if you enjoy the content, again, think about leaving a comment, leaving a like, subscribing, following us on Twitch, where I stream Monday through Friday again, and I hope to see you real soon in the next one. Bye!